Welcome to the second module of the course entitled Educational Technologies, and today's short talk will be mostly about research directed towards IT and learning in educational settings. This research is conducted in a wide variety of fields such as educational technology, computer-supported collaborative learning, asynchronous learning networks, technology-mediated learning, or even computer-assisted learning or computer-assisted instruction, or also sometimes referred to as e-learning. This is a set of overlapping fields that all focus on research on IT and learning. When we look at the technologies and talk about different systems that are utilized as tools for learning, there are many different ways of how to categorize them. For instance, it's fairly common to distinguish between synchronous versus asynchronous technologies. That is, synchronous as in technologies supporting real-time interaction, or asynchronous technologies supporting interaction that is delayed in time. Another way of framing is to zoom in on the fact whether it's text-based and or audio-based and or video-based. And in terms of communication technologies, we like to differ between one-to-one interaction, one-to-many, or many-to-many interaction. And looking at some recent examples, we can see that it's not always clear-cut whether it's an information or a communication technology. We tend to see more and more of how these two modes blend. If we look at the research from all of these fields, there are some fundamental facts that can be established right up front. Firstly, there is fairly convincing evidence that distance education provides just as good results as do traditional campus education. There is no proof or very little proof that it's better, but definitely not worse. There is also a fairly strong cohesive opinion amongst researchers that the use of technologies can be said to increase motivation, engagement, and performance, especially for weaker students that are not performing as well in traditional settings. And finally, most scholars seem to agree that development and innovation within the field of distance education is having effect also on the evolution of methods and technologies in campus-based education. So you might say that distance education is driving the evolution and the changes in traditional education in many aspects. My own research within this field was actually my PhD thesis, which was called Communities of Distance Education. And as a scholar, I was one of the first to focus on the social aspects of being an online student. I started off by doing analysis of asynchronous text-based forums where students communicated amongst one another and with their teachers, and I identified three genres of communication which I labeled query, feedback, and small talk, where query-oriented communication, that is posing and asking questions relating to the course content, proved to be approximately 1/4 of the communication. Much more rich in volume was the feedback genre, where students evaluated and gave critique on anything ranging from teacher performance to technological failures and stuff like that. And the final category, which was about 40% of the total body of communication, I labeled small talk, since it was simply the social glue where people socialized, got acquainted, and I concluded that this was a very important dimension in the kind of social environment of being a distance student. They were actually allowed to have some fun. I also categorized the different study approaches that distance students tended to adopt. And if you want to read more about this, you can check out my PhD thesis, which is in PDF at the course website. As a kind of conclusion of all of my research, I concluded that an important process in establishing a good social climate in online education is to do what I called communitize. That is, various types of actions and utterances that strengthen the group identity of a distance education course. I will end this short introduction with 3 semi-provoking thoughts relating to what I now find most interesting in terms of research on IT in education. And the first one is that I'm becoming increasingly convinced that the learning management systems approach is probably not the way to go forward. I think for too long we have tried to design and implement LMS that try to be the only technology that is needed for distance education. We tend to put everything into an LMS and think that that is the way to solve all the problems of the student. I don't really think that is true. There are plenty of other resources that doesn't necessarily have to be designed by the educational organization that are important for students. I also think that less is more. Smaller modular solution that can be easily adopted or rejected by educators and students is a prerequisite for a more flexible and changing environment. Because both students and teachers, I find, are reluctant to adopt technologies that forces them to change their way of working radically. So there is a contradictory relationship between rapid adoption and radical innovation. And finally, I think a challenge that needs to be faced by researchers is to focus on the fact that the most important thing that is happening at schools today is the fact that the classroom is being digitized by artifacts and computers that are personal to the students, and that the students are bringing into the educational setting totally out of control of the university. And in my thinking, this is a very good thing, and it will have interesting effects on educational practice, since the affordances of these personal technologies are really nice. To go back to the LMS aspect, I would again say that a ground system is not always the answer. and the problems relating to collective adoption is different and more complex than if technologies need to be individually adopted. And lean, simple technologies always tend to outperform more complex ones. And the less is more aspect relates to the fact that educational institutions are inherently conservative, and innovation and change is often stepwise, incremental, rather than radical. And it's important to see the potential of technology as a catalyst for pedagogical discussions and discussions concerning change and innovation of the practice. The computer resources that are offered by universities is, at least in Sweden, very scarcely used. Students tend to prefer their own personal technologies, and computer labs of today are empty most of the time. And if we acknowledge that the fact that the technology in the classroom is not a problem space that is totally the responsibility of teachers and their institutions, so much interesting could happen to practice. And this would put us in a position where we would have a student-centered perspective as opposed of a course-centered perspective. So finally, I would encourage you for the reflection text for this module to think a little bit about what you find are the contemporary challenges for educational technologies. Can you see any directions for future design? And do you have any predictions of how we will use computers in educational settings in the future? Thank you, and good luck with reading and writing.